Let's continue this week's focus on the emerging market crisis. So just who is to blame for the current state of emerging markets? Is it the president of the country or external international factors? Turkey is blaming US import tariffs for its tanking currency. Some local experts agree, but others say that's rubbish. ENCA anchor Shahan Ramkisoon is in Istanbul.
You'll hear several reasons about why Turkey is in this financial mess. A tanking lira was ultimately the result of this tweet. Import tariffs shook the markets here.
Unfortunately, sanctions and the currency, the US currency against the lira, almost doubling within the last year, has had some great impact on the economy in Turkey and in the public. And unfortunately, the chances are it's going to get worse before it gets better.
But not everyone believes this economic difficulty is due to external factors. In fact, one analyst was offended by that idea, saying it's structural.
Let's look at the structural problems of the Turkish economy to begin with. Those are, need for, foreign energy sources, as well as the, foreign intermediary goods for the exports. Those are the two large structural problems Turkey has been facing for a long time. And that creates the large current account deficit in the boom time or the growth time of the economy. And in order to, of course, that leads to foreign funding need increases.
Some say President Recep Tayyip Erdogan borrowed too much and spent too fast on construction. Others say it was the right moves to strengthen the economy. Expert opinions vary naturally. But they all agree it's now time for Turkey to move past the discussion on what could have been done to avoid this bruising economic battle. How it recovers really is key.
The International Monetary Fund on Wednesday revealed that it has entered into a $57 billion loan agreement with the government of Argentina. Now, this is $7 billion more than the original $50 billion loan announced by President Mauricio Macri in June. This latest development comes amid ongoing opposition to an IMF bailout, including a court challenge. ENCA's Aldrin Sampier has more.
More money from the IMF and more quickly too.
Cabe consignar, además, que dichos fondos ya no tienen carácter precautorio como establecía el acuerdo original, sino que podrán ser plenamente utilizados como soporte presupuestario. En el terreno de la política monetaria y cambiaria, en las últimas semanas hemos enfrentado jornadas de mucha volatilidad que se han traducido en una importante depreciación del peso.
The additional $7 billion is urgently required because the peso continued to weaken after the initial $50 billion deal in June. And now the Argentine Central Bank, the BCRA, has handed over the wheel and agreed not to intervene in the exchange rate as it did in the past.
The BCRA has decided to adopt a floating exchange rate regime without intervention. A floating exchange rate regime without intervention. In the event of extreme overshooting of the exchange rate, the BCRA may conduct limited intervention to prevent disorderly market conditions.
While some of the country's problems are due to a difficult global economic climate, government has admitted mistakes were made and now it's paying the price. The news that Argentina has agreed not to peg the peso and allow a floating exchange rate could be the reason why Luis Caputo resigned this week as president of the bank. At least that's what one of the litigants who is challenging the IMF deal in court believes.
La salida del hasta ayer presidente del Banco Central, Luis Caputo, que era el que reclamaba esto, indicaría que no va a haber tantos fondos para esto, que el Fondo Monetario Internacional no está dispuesto a poner muchos dólares con el objetivo de controlar el valor del dólar en la Argentina.
Claudio Lozano is one of 2 applicants who have asked the court to nullify President Mauricio Macri's agreement with the IMF.
La Constitución Nacional de la Argentina dice con toda claridad que cualquier acuerdo sobre endeudamiento del Estado Nacional debe pasar por el Parlamento argentino.
Despite concerns about the legality of the deal, Argentina needs the money to spark growth, pay its debt and return the country to some form of economic stability. The now $57 billion deal, however, is still a bitter pill as it comes with government job cuts, slashed subsidies and strict control of fiscal policy. Aldrin Sampier, Buenos Aires, Argentina.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says the world has faith that South Africa will rise from its current economic woes. He met with a number of world leaders who attended the 73rd United Nations General Assembly. Kailishle Kumalo reports from New York.
By all accounts, Team South Africa's message has been loud and clear.
Yes, we've dealt with the land issue here quite extensively, with a view of explaining more in detail and in depth the rationale behind the land question. And I found that all the audiences that we interacted with on the land question fully understand the rationale.
Economic recovery has also been at the heart of Ramaphosa's message to world leaders. The president used the United Nations platform to silence claims that the US may cut foreign aid to countries like South Africa.
At the same table with President Trump over lunch, and we exchanged pleasantries, and there was no animosity, there was no negativity, and we spoke about common South Africans that we both know, and that went on very well. So I did not sense a negativity that could, in the end, lead to frosty relations between the two countries.
There is also definite change coming to South African diplomatic missions abroad.
We want our embassies not just to focus on politics, we want them to focus on the economy, on investment.
Tensions between the US and Iran escalated when it came to the hot topic of nuclear weapons.
Iran's leaders plunder the nation's resources to enrich themselves and to spread mayhem across the Middle East and far beyond. The Iranian people are rightly outraged that their leaders have embezzled billions of dollars from Iran's treasury, seized valuable portions of the economy, and looted the people's religious endowments, all to line their own pockets and send their proxies to wage war. Not good.
As world leaders are wrapping up their business in New York, for South Africa, the biggest test will be how it will use its non-permanent seats within the UN Security Council, especially in light of raging conflicts in Africa and elsewhere. Kailishle Kumalo, New York, United States of America.
When Week in One continues, we speak to 2 South Africans visiting Turkey and hang out with dancing youth in Brazil's favelas. Hello again. Well, this week we explored the financial distress of emerging markets, particularly Argentina, Brazil, Venezuela and Turkey. While all these countries suffered through crashing currencies and high inflation, they still enjoy the benefits of tourism, earning billions through difficult economic times. ENCA Shahan Ramkisoon takes a look at the industry in Istanbul.
It's a charming contradiction to the sounds of this bustling city. Around 15 million people live in Turkey's tourist hotspot. Istanbul is loud, grungy in some areas, and traffic is a nightmare, with many hooting their way through these narrow streets. But beyond the chaos lies a picturesque metropolis, a place where East really does meet West. Istanbul is a city where two continents collide, smack bang in the middle of Europe and Asia. But right here, the Bosphorus Strait connects the Sea of Marmara and the Black Sea. It's a marriage of continents that leads to diversity. The food has hints of influence from both sides. Food stalls line many streets. Some know all too well how to win over visitors like me. Good. The eclectic charm of Istanbul makes it a leading tourist destination. 32 million foreigners visited last year, earning the economy $26.5 billion. That figure is expected to climb to $32 billion this year. I'm standing at the entrance of a historic world site, a place once home to two religions. This is the Hagia Sophia, still standing tall for about 1,500 years. Built on the ruins of two churches, a mosque emerged. Now a museum for people around the globe to admire. Its rich history and architectural wonder makes it the top tourist attraction here. There are an estimated 90,000 mosques in Turkey, symbolic of the religion here. The state says 99.8% of its citizens are Muslim. Mosques are part of the attraction, breaking the monotony of trees and office buildings with ancient designs that stand out. Naturally, I bumped into South Africans here.
We're basically here just to tour and have a lot of fun. Try things that we've never done before. We've actually been married for 12 years. So, second honeymoon.
Now, obviously, the currency issues here is something you know about. You took advantage of it, right?
Yes, it's made it a bit more attractive for us. But I think the main reason for us coming here was more to experience the culture, the lifestyle, and also the blending of cultures as well. Because obviously, Istanbul and Turkey has a lot of history.
So a currency crash isn't all bad news. It's hurting many Turks, but also bringing in the tourists. However, in the end, it's not just about economics. Currencies get weaker and stronger. Markets go up and down. But the beauty of Turkey will never fade.
The economic crisis in Brazil has led to one of the largest NGOs cancelling 95% of its community projects in recent years. Afro-Reggae, operating in one of Brazil's slums or favelas, has lost funding from both government and the private sector, with social responsibility budgets being slashed. Our reporter Michael Apple and cameraman Joe Komani are in favela to see what this particular NGO is still able to achieve in such tough times.
The economic crisis is impacting everything in Brazil, and non-governmental organizations like Afro-Reggae are not spared from that. We went to go chat to one of the project coordinators who explained that where they had 40 projects benefiting a lot of the kids that they bring out of the sex and drug trade in Brazil, they now only have 2.
Like South Africa, Brazil has 2 faces. Inequality is a massive problem. Favelas or slums are home to some of the most notorious drug cartels that, to this day, rule the streets. Those who call favelas home are marginalized and mostly black. NGO Afro-Reggae started out as you'd expect in Rio, with a party.
Afro-Reggae was established in 1992 with reggae parties taking place downtown. After that, we started a newspaper focusing on black people and came to Vigario Real after the massacre of 21 people in 1993. We started a culture movement to help a community that had been destroyed after the massacre.
The massacre in Vigario Real occurred in August 1993, allegedly at the hands of the Rio military police in revenge for the death of 4 police officers. Among those killed, 7 men playing cards and a family of 8. It's one of the many scars in the favela community.
The community was completely destroyed after the massacre. It was a community left with no self-esteem, a lot of violence, and never had anything positive in their history.
Project coordinator Anderson Saar knows the cartels all too well. They've even tried to kill him in the past, but his popularity and network of informants and friends have managed to keep him alive. He's often on the streets trying to convince youngsters to get out of the cartels and move away from a life of violence. The NGO had a band, dancers, an orchestra, and teachers giving private music lessons, but the recession has stopped all of that. Instruments are now gathering dust.
Afro reggae has been affected by the economic crisis like the entire country. We had to stop many projects. When we started making our own money, the economic crisis stopped that process. For many years, about 40% of our funding was generated by us. We had a lot of projects that could generate an income for us. Unfortunately, we couldn't pay teachers for 1.5 years and have had to cut projects from 40 down to 2.
There's such an incredible vibe at Afro Reggae though, and they continue to bring in youngsters and churn them out reborn, free of the cartels. These kids have been trained as camera operators and sound engineers. And man, can they dance. Michael Apple in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil.
And that was your Week in One. I'm Yuveka Rangapat. Take care.